Commander Talus Vorn's compound eyes reflected the pulsing red alert symbols flooding every display on the Zendari border station's command deck. His chitinous appendages clicked rapidly against the metallic console as he processed the incoming sensor data. "Report," he demanded, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standardized Galactic common. Senior Sensor Officer Nix Calera's antennae twitched nervously. "Unknown vessel approaching at sublight speed, Commander. Configuration matches nothing in our database. Energy signatures are unusual." Vorn studied the holographic projection hovering above the central command table. The vessel was small by Zendari standards, but its design defied conventional spacefaring logic. Instead of the graceful lines and geometric precision favored by most known species, this ship featured asymmetrical protrusions and seemingly random structural elements. "Have they responded to standard hailing frequencies?" "Negative, Commander. We've transmitted first contact protocol messages on all known communication bands. They maintain their approach vector." Vorn's mandibles clicked in agitation. The Zendari Confederation had enjoyed 2 centuries of relative peace since the Mrikian incursion. His border station was primarily a customs checkpoint, not a defensive outpost. Still, his duty was clear. Tactical, prepare warning shots. Target debris field ahead of their approach vector. The weapons officer's claws danced across her console. "Warning shots configured, Commander. Fire." Brilliant pulses of energy lanced from the station's defensive arrays, detonating harmlessly in space half a kilometer ahead of the approaching vessel. The universal language of caution. For 11 seconds, nothing changed. The alien ship maintained its course. "They're not responding, Commander." Vorn felt the weight of 7 generations of Zendari military tradition bearing down upon his carapace. "Final warning. Target their forward propulsion systems, minimal yield. We want to disable, not destroy." Targeting. Firing. This time, the energy pulses struck the alien vessel directly, causing its forward momentum to falter. For a brief moment, Vorn allowed himself to believe the crisis averted. Then everything changed. The alien ship's hull reconfigured itself, panels shifting to reveal weapons ports unlike anything in Zendari technical archives. Before Vorn could issue new orders, beams of concentrated energy sliced through space toward the station, and the 2 patrol craft flanking it. "Evasive action," Vorn commanded, but the words had barely left his translator when the patrol ships erupted into expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. The station rocked violently as auxiliary power systems engaged, compensating for damage to their main reactor. Klaxons blared as emergency containment fields activated throughout the structure. "Multiple hull breaches on levels 3 through 7, reported the damage control officer. Casualties reported in sections 14, 22, and 39. Vorn steadied himself against his command podium. "Return fire, all batteries." But the targeting systems found nothing to lock onto. The alien vessel had somehow disappeared. Sensors detect a spatial distortion consistent with previously theoretical faster-than-light travel methods, Calera reported, her voice trembling. "They're gone, Commander." Silence fell across the command deck, broken only by the continued alert sirens and damage reports flowing in from across the station. 42 Zendari dead, 2 patrol ships destroyed, and an unknown enemy capable of technologies the Confederation had only speculated about. "Communication logs show we received a partial transmission burst just before they jumped," said the communications officer, running it through all known linguistic matrices. Vorn moved to the officer's station, watching as their most advanced artificial intelligence systems processed the alien communication. Fragments resolved into recognizable patterns, then words, then meaning. Haste Pathfinder, Earth, diplomatic mission, Zendari aggression, defend, return. The communication officer's exoskeleton paled. "Commander, cross-referencing with intelligence reports from our trading partners in the Arcturus sector." The vessel configuration and communication patterns match descriptions of a species known as humans. A cold sensation spread through Vorn's thorax. He had heard the stories. All Zendari officers had. A bipedal species from a death world, known for unpredictable behavior and alarming adaptability. A species that had reportedly survived catastrophes that should have ended them, and emerged stronger each time. Initiate Emergency Protocol Zenith 7. Vorn ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. Transmit all sensor data and communications to High Command. Then send the alert to every Zendari world and outpost. Ace's officers rushed to comply. Vorn composed the message himself, mandibles clicking rapidly. Alert. Hostile warship sighted. Humans are approaching. Captain Alina Rice pressed a sterile bandage to the gash on her forehead as emergency lights bathed the Pathfinder's bridge in pulsing crimson. Around her, the command crew worked with practiced precision despite the chaos of the past hour. Damage report, she demanded, her voice steady despite the pounding in her skull. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Wong's fingers danced across her console. Main communication array destroyed. Life support failing in sections 12 through 15. Engine capacity at 62%. Hull breaches sealed on decks 4 and 7. Casualties. Wong's expression tightened. 12 injured, 3 critical. No fatalities. Small mercies, Rias thought. She turned to her tactical officer. Jackson, what the hell happened out there? Lieutenant Commander Chen's normally calm demeanor had given way to barely controlled fury. They fired on us without provocation, Captain. Standard first contact protocols were broadcasting on all frequencies. Actually, interrupted Dr. Lakshmi Patil from the science station, that may not be entirely accurate. All eyes turned to the linguist. The universal translator was experiencing calibration issues when we entered the system. I've reviewed the logs, and there's a 17% chance our peaceful greeting was mistranslated. Rice felt her stomach sink. Meaning we might have accidentally told them we were targeting their station instead of greeting it. Some language patterns are structurally similar. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. So our defensive systems automatically returned fire based on their warning shot. And now they think we're hostile invaders. Rice summarized. Perfect. The ship's AI interface, ARIA, materialized as a holographic projection beside the captain's chair. Captain, I've completed my analysis of sensor data from the engagement. The species matches descriptions of the Zendari Confederation from our preliminary intelligence briefings. Rice frowned. The insectoid coalition we were sent to establish diplomatic relations with. Correct. A highly organized, hierarchical society with technological capabilities roughly equivalent to Earth circa 2190. Notably risk-averse and procedural in their approach to interspecies relations. And we just blew up 2 of their patrol ships. Rice massaged her temples. Options. Her XO, Commander Miguel Rodriguez, stepped forward. The diplomatic fleet is still 3 days behind us. We can't contact them with our communication array destroyed. We need repairs, and we need them fast. Nearest Federation outpost is 2 weeks at our current speed, Chen added. Rice studied the star chart hovering over the tactical station. What about Keldrax's station? It's less than 14 hours from our position. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. That's Smuggler's Haven. Captain, Keldraxis isn't affiliated with any major power. It's a lawless trading post. Which means they won't ask questions and won't report our presence. Rice countered. Set course, maximum sustainable speed. 13 hours later, the damaged Pathfinder limped into the sprawling, jury-rigged collection of interconnected habitats that made up Keldrax's station. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan that reverberated through the hull. Maintain security protocols, Rice instructed as she led the away team toward the airlock. Full environmental suits until we confirm atmospheric compatibility. Sidearms concealed but accessible. The station's customs area, little more than a repurposed cargo bay. teemed with the most diverse collection of alien species many of the crew had ever encountered. Beings of all descriptions bartered, argued, and conducted business in dozens of languages. "We need to find someone who can help with repairs," Rodriguez muttered, his hand never straying far from his concealed weapon. "And someone who knows about the Zendari," Rise added. "We need intelligence." A sinuous, multi-limbed figure detached itself from the shadows near a beverage dispensary, four eyes blinking independently as it assessed the humans. "You seek repairs, yes. Your vessel shows battle damage. Interesting." Ray stepped forward cautiously. "And you are?" "Morxel, at your service." The alien's translator rendered its burbling speech into accented English. "Engineer, information broker, and former resident of Zendari space. Your timing is fortuitous, humans. I've been waiting to meet your kind." "How did you know we're human?" Chen asked suspiciously. Morxel's upper limbs made a gesture that might have been amusement. "News travels faster than light, especially bad news. The Zendari communication networks are buzzing with alerts about a human attack on their border station. There's quite a bounty for information on your whereabouts." Reyes and Rodriguez exchanged alarmed glances. "Perhaps," Morxel continued, lowering its voice, "we should continue this conversation somewhere less public. I can help with your repairs, and more importantly, help you understand what you've stumbled into. The Zendari aren't warriors by nature, Captain." The use of her rank made Reyes stiffen. "They're terrified of you, and fear makes even peaceful species very, very dangerous." The Grand Chamber of the Zendari High Council had not been convened in emergency session for 73 cycles. Now, its tiered seating platforms buzzed with the nervous clicking and whistling of the Confederation's highest officials. Holographic displays hovered above the central dais, showing the damaged border station and debris fields where patrol ships had once been. High Chancellor Vex Tyrannus, her iridescent exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights, raised all four of her upper limbs for silence. The chamber gradually stilled. "We face an unprecedented situation," she began, her translator rendering her complex, pheromonal speech patterns into audible language. "The species known as humans has committed an act of aggression against our sovereign territory." Admiral Ziv Krell stepped forward, his scared carapace and missing right antenna marking him as a veteran of conflicts few present remembered. "Chancellor, members of the Council, I have compiled all available intelligence on this species." The holographic displays shifted to show fragmentary images and data points collected from trading partners and exploration vessels. Humans originate from a high-gravity death world they call Earth. Their physiology suggests evolution under constant threat. Their endocrine system allows them to temporarily exceed normal physical limitations in emergencies. They possess redundant organs and remarkable healing capabilities. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "More concerning is their behavioral pattern," Krell continued. "Analysis of 17 known first contact scenarios involving humans shows a consistent approach. They initially present as peaceful explorers or traders, establish relations, then gradually expand their influence until the host species becomes economically or militarily dependent." Elder Sapphics, the Council's religious representative, raised her withered appendage. "The ancient texts speak of the adaptable darkness between stars that would one day test our Confederation. Many interpret this as referring to humanity." "What of their technology?" asked the science minister. Krell's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Their vessel displayed capabilities our scientists considered theoretical. They appear to prioritize adaptability over efficiency. Their ships can reconfigure for different functions, and their faster-than-light method uses principles our physicists are still struggling to comprehend." "How should we respond?" The defense minister's question hung in the air. Krell's answer was immediate. "Full military mobilization. I propose deployment of the 7th and 3rd Fleets to create a defensive perimeter, activation of all automated defense platforms, and placement of our ground forces on highest alert." The chamber erupted into clicking debates. Chancellor Tyrannus raised her limbs again. Admiral, such a response requires significant resources. Is the threat truly so severe? Chancellor, our intelligence indicates this was merely a scout vessel. Long-range sensors have detected a formation of 12 larger vessels approaching our space. We believe this to be their main invasion force. 3 light-years away, Fleet Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, flagship of humanity's first major diplomatic mission to the Zendari Confederation. 11 other vessels cruised in perfect formation around them, representing Earth's United Nations. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from a vessel approaching our position," his communications officer reported. "It's the Pathfinder." Yamamoto frowned. The Pathfinder was supposed to establish initial contact 3 days ago. Put them through. Captain Rice's face appeared on the view screen, a bandage visible on her forehead. "Admiral, we have a situation." For 10 minutes, Yamamoto listened as Rice detailed the disastrous first contact. When she finished, his expression remained carefully neutral. "Captain, while I appreciate your concern, your account seems unlikely. The Zendari have maintained peaceful trading relations with the Arcturian Alliance for decades. A translation error, while unfortunate, would typically trigger clarification protocols, not military engagement. With respect, Admiral, I was there. They fired first, and our automated defense systems responded. The situation has escalated beyond a simple misunderstanding." Yamamoto sighed. "We'll proceed as planned. The diplomatic mission continues. Your ship will rejoin the fleet, and we will cross into Zendari space together. Our combined presence should make our peaceful intentions clear." After Reyes's image disappeared, Yamamoto turned to his XO. "Increase passive scanning. If Captain Rice is right about the Zendari response, I want to know what we're flying into." Back on the Pathfinder, now repaired and underway to rejoin the fleet, Reyes sat alone in her ready room. Morxel's warnings echoed in her mind as she studied Zendari cultural and linguistic files with newfound intensity. "There," she whispered, spotting a pattern in their communication protocols that the fleet's linguists had missed. What humans interpreted as standard greeting frequencies, the Zendari reserved for military targeting coordination, and the respectful pause before responding that human diplomats had been instructed to use. In Zendari communication, silence indicated hostile intent. Reyes activated her console. "Chen, Wang, my ready room. Now, we need to find a way to warn the fleet before we cross the border." As the Pathfinder raced to rejoin the diplomatic mission, 300 Zendari warships moved into position around the system's jump point, their weapons primed and targeting systems ready for the humans' arrival. The space around Zendari border outpost, Ket 7, shimmered as reality folded upon itself. 12 human vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their gleaming hulls reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. On the bridge of the UES Harmony, Admiral Yamamoto stood with his hands clasped behind his back. "Status report." "Sir," his tactical officer responded, voice tight, "we're surrounded. Sensors detect approximately 300 Zendari vessels in defensive formation. Weapons signatures active on all of them." The main view screen displayed the breathtaking and terrifying sight. The Zendari fleet formed an intricate 3-dimensional geometric pattern that both showcased their precision and maximized weapons coverage. Thousands of automated defense platforms hung in the void between their ships, creating a web of overlapping fields of fire. "Open channels on all frequencies," Yamamoto ordered. "Standard first contact peaceful greeting, all languages." "Channel open." "Sir." Yamamoto stepped forward. "This is Fleet Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto of the United Earth Diplomatic Fleet. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and mutual understanding between our peoples." The response was immediate, the activation of targeting systems across the entire Zendari fleet. Warning signals blared across the human vessels. "They're painting us with targeting locks, Admiral," the tactical officer reported. "Recommend raising shields." "Hold," Yamamoto commanded. "No defensive posture. We maintain our peaceful stance." The Pathfinder slid into position at the fleet's flank, having arrived minutes before the main formation. On its bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Chen studied the Zendari deployment with growing concern. "Captain," he said to Reyes, "there's something strange about their formation." Reyes joined him at the tactical display. "What are you seeing?" Chen highlighted a section of the Zendari fleet. "This gap in their coverage, it's too obvious, too deliberate. In any standard military doctrine, this would be considered a critical weakness." "You think it's intentional?" Reyes asked. "I'm certain of it. My parents died in the Proxima incident because we misunderstood the Telseri defense patterns." Chen's voice remained steady despite the painful memory. "This isn't a tactical error. It's a test. They're watching to see if we'll exploit the perceived weakness." Reyes' eyes widened as understanding dawned. "If we move toward that gap, we confirm every fear they have about humanity," Chen finished. "They're not threatening attack. They're examining our intentions." Reyes activated the ship-to-ship channel. "Admiral Yamamoto, requesting emergency communication." "Not now, Captain," came the terse reply. "We're attempting to establish dialogue with the Zendari." "Sir, with respect, we've identified a critical cultural misunderstanding. The Zendari fleet configuration is a deliberate test of our intentions. Standard protocol would suggest repositioning our fleet to defensive stance Delta, but doing so would place our vessels directly in their perceived vulnerability." Silence stretched for several seconds. "Explain," Yamamoto finally said. "The Zendari are testing whether we'll exploit a tactical advantage. Moving toward their apparent weakness would confirm their belief that we're aggressive predators. Lieutenant Commander Chen has analyzed their formation based on his experience with similar species." The tactical officer on the Harmony interrupted. "Admiral, the Zendari vessels are adjusting position. They're tightening formation around the gap Commander Chen identified." Chen's voice was urgent. "They're responding to our attention to the gap. They know we've spotted it." Admiral Yamamoto's expression remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the command rail. "Options, Captain Reyes." Reyes took a deep breath. "Sir, I have a proposal. It violates every first contact protocol in the book, but it might be our only chance to prevent this situation from deteriorating further." "I'm listening." "Let me take the Pathfinder forward, alone. No weapons, minimal shields. I need to demonstrate something no tactical simulator would ever recommend. Something so counter to military doctrine that it could only be interpreted as a genuine desire for peace. You're proposing to place your vessel and crew at the complete mercy of a potentially hostile force," Yamamoto stated flatly. "Yes, sir. Because if I'm right about the Zendari, it's the only language they'll understand right now." Yamamoto was silent for a long moment. Around him, the bridge crew held their breath. "You have 12 hours, Captain," he finally said. "If you fail, I'll have no choice but to withdraw the fleet and reassess our approach to the Zendari Confederation." As the communication ended, Reyes turned to her bridge crew. "Helm, prepare to break formation. Tactical, develop a course that demonstrates our awareness of their formation without approaching the gap." "And if they fire on us, Captain?" Chen asked quietly. Reyes met his gaze. "Then we'll have learned something valuable about the Zendari, Lieutenant Commander. And hopefully, our fleet will escape with that knowledge." The Pathfinder's engines flared to life as it separated from the human formation, a single small vessel moving deliberately toward the edge of the most formidable alien fleet humanity had ever encountered. Admiral Ziv Krell watched the sensor displays with all four of his eyes, mandibles clicking in a rhythm that his subordinates recognized as intense concentration. The small human vessel, the same one that had attacked their border station, had broken formation from the main fleet and was approaching on an unusual vector. "Analysis," he demanded. "Uncertain, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "The vessel is executing a series of unpredictable maneuvers that follow no known combat approach pattern. They appear to be deliberately avoiding the vulnerability in our formation while simultaneously demonstrating awareness of it. Weapons status. Their weapons systems remain inactive. Minimal shield configuration detected. Krell's antennae twitched forward in the Zendari expression of puzzlement. Magnify visual. The main display zoomed in on the human vessel. Battle damage was still visible on portions of its hull despite obvious repairs. That ship destroyed 2 of our patrol vessels. Sub-Commander Illith reminded him unnecessarily. Recommend immediate targeting. Hold, Krell ordered. Something is unexpected here. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, Captain Reyes maintained outward calm despite her racing pulse. Helm, execute pattern Theta 9. Let's show them our maneuverability without appearing threatening. The ship responded instantly, performing a complex series of rolls and turns that would be impossible for the larger Zendari vessels. The maneuvers brought them gradually closer to Admiral Krell's flagship, a massive vessel at the center of the Zendari formation. They're tracking us with multiple targeting systems, Captain Chen reported. But they haven't locked weapons. Good. That suggests curiosity rather than immediate hostility. Reyes studied the imposing Zendari flagship. Bring us to position Alpha, 500 meters from their command vessel. Captain, that places us directly in the convergence point of at least 27 weapons platforms, Chen cautioned. Precisely. Reyes stood from her captain's chair. And now we show them something truly unexpected. All stop. The Pathfinder glided to a halt, hanging motionless, in space directly before the Zendari flagship. Power down weapons systems, Reyes ordered. All of them. Chen hesitated for only a fraction of a second before complying. Weapons systems powering down. Shields to minimum. Enough to maintain life support against background radiation. Nothing more. Shields at minimum, Captain. Reyes took a deep breath. Now the engines. This time, her bridge crew's shock was visible. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. Captain, without engines, will be completely vulnerable. We won't even be able to maneuver away if they decide to fire. That's exactly the point, Miguel. Reyes's voice was steady. Morxel provided me with information about ancient Zendari warrior traditions. Before their technological age, when 2 hive colonies came into conflict, they would send champion warriors to resolve the dispute. These champions would approach each other and expose their throat spiracles, their most vulnerable point, as a demonstration of honor and trust. We're offering our ship's throat, Chen murmured in understanding. Exactly. Engineering, power down main engines, maintain life support and communications only. The familiar hum of the Pathfinder's engines faded to silence. The ship now drifted, completely vulnerable, before the assembled might of the Zendari fleet. Communications are the modifications Morxel helped us implement ready. Yes, Captain. The system should be able to transmit informal Zendari linguistic patterns. Open a channel. Reyes straightened her uniform and faced the view screen. Transmit this message. We offer our ship's throat to your blade as proof of honest intentions. The incident at your border was a tragic misunderstanding born of our ignorance, not hostility. We seek dialogue, not conquest. The message transmitted, then silence filled the bridge. Seconds stretched into a full minute with no response. Captain, Chen said quietly, 3 Zendari vessels are moving to flank us. Rodriguez's hand moved instinctively toward the tactical controls before he caught himself. If they fire now, then we've learned something important about the Zendari, Reyes replied, echoing her earlier words. But I don't think they will. On the flagship's command deck, Admiral Krell stared at the translated human message in disbelief. They've invoked the Quetzender, he said, using the ancient term for the warrior's honor display. And they've rendered themselves completely vulnerable. It could be a trap, Sub-Commander Illith insisted. Some deception we don't understand. No military commander sacrifices tactical advantage so completely as a deception, Krell responded. Scan their vessel again. Confirmed, Admiral. Their weapon systems are offline. Engines powered down. Minimal shield configuration only. In that moment, Krell made a decision that would change the course of Zendari history. Power down our forward weapons array. Admiral. Illith protested. Do it, Krell ordered. And establish visual communication with their vessel. I wish to see these humans with my own eyes. As the view screen activated, showing a clear image of Captain Alina Rice standing resolutely on her bridge, a murmur ran through the Zendari command deck. The humans were so different, soft-skinned, with only 2 eyes and no visible exoskeleton. Yet the posture of their captain, straight-backed and unwavering, communicated a universal language of courage that transcended species. I am Admiral Ziv Krell of the Zendari Confederation, he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into the human language. You have performed the Ketsender. I would know how a species from beyond our space came to understand our most sacred warrior tradition. Keldrax's station had never hosted diplomatic negotiations of interstellar significance. The neutral trading post, cobbled together from salvaged ships and prefabricated modules, typically accommodated smugglers, mercenaries, and traders operating in the gray areas between established territories. Today, however, its largest docking bay had been hastily converted into a meeting ground for representatives of humanity and the Zendari Confederation. Captain Rice stood with Admiral Yamamoto and 3 other human diplomats on one side of the makeshift conference area. The stark overhead lighting reflected off the polished carapaces of the Zendari delegation, led by Admiral Krell, who waited on the opposite side. 4 heavily armed escorts flanked each group, maintaining a tense vigilance. Remember, Yamamoto whispered, no sudden movements. Their compound eyes perceive motion differently than ours. What seems casual to us might appear threatening to them. Reyes nodded, fighting the instinctive unease she felt in the presence of the towering insectoid aliens. The Zendari stood nearly 7 feet tall, their chitinous exoskeletons displaying intricate patterns unique to each individual. Multiple compound eyes studied the humans with alien intensity, while mandibles clicked in what the translators identified as sub-vocalizations. Admiral Krell stepped forward, his upper limbs performing a complex gesture. We acknowledge this neutral ground and the intentions of peaceful discourse, his translator rendered in slightly mechanical English. Admiral Yamamoto mirrored the gesture as best he could with human anatomy. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us, Admiral Krell. The incident at your border station was a tragic misunderstanding that we deeply regret. The formal greetings continued, but Reyes noticed the Zendari interpreters struggling with human facial expressions. One leaned toward Admiral Krell, clicking rapidly in what appeared to be confusion. Is there a problem? Yamamoto asked, noticing the exchange. Krell's mandibles moved in what the briefing materials identified as embarrassment. My linguistic specialists are having difficulty interpreting your facial movements. Your species seems to bare teeth frequently, but without consistent correlation to aggression displays. Reyes understood immediately. You mean smiling. It's a human expression of friendliness or happiness, not a threat display. The Zendari delegation vibrated their antennae in the equivalent of a collective ah of understanding. Cultural exchange should precede political negotiation, Reyes suggested. We clearly have much to learn about each other's communication patterns. Krell's head tilted in consideration. An unconventional approach, but there is wisdom in it. The formal talks gave way to a more exploratory cultural exchange. Human diplomats demonstrated basic emotional expressions, while Zendari interpreters cataloged them. In return, the Zendari explained their complex antennae positions and mandible movements that conveyed nuanced emotional states invisible to human observers. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through the station's environmental systems. As the environmental control cycled, a faint melody from the station's central hub drifted into the conference area. A haunting tune played by one of the station's resident musicians. The Zendari delegation froze, all 4 of Admiral Krell's eyes widening. Is something wrong? Yamamoto asked, tensing. This arrangement of sound waves, Krell responded, antennae extended fully. Our auditory organs perceive it as a complex mathematical pattern. It is unexpectedly pleasing. Music, Rise explained. It's an art form humans have practiced for thousands of years. Art. The concept seemed to puzzle the Zendari. You arrange sound for purposes other than communication. Rise smiled, then quickly suppressed it when she noticed the Zendari interpreter's confusion. We create patterns in many mediums: sound, light, physical materials, for aesthetic and emotional purposes. This sparked intense clicking among the Zendari. Admiral Krell finally turned back to the humans. We would experience more of this music. In exchange, we could share our liquid crystal formations that respond to neural patterns. Yamamoto glanced at Rise with raised eyebrows. She gave a slight nod. This was exactly the kind of cultural bridge they needed. As the impromptu cultural exchange continued, the station's kitchen staff, sensing opportunity, brought forth specially prepared dishes that both species could safely consume. The simple act of sharing food, a universal constant across countless worlds, further dissolved barriers. But not everyone welcomed the warming relations. Throughout the station, hidden figures monitored the proceedings with growing alarm. In a shadowed maintenance corridor, a slender figure pressed a communicator to its mouthparts. The connection is proceeding faster than anticipated. The humans have employed unexpected social bonding mechanisms. The reply came immediately. Unacceptable. The alliance cannot be permitted to form. Proceed to secondary protocols. Understood. The figure activated a small device that displayed a schematic of the station's infrastructure. Critical junction points flashed red as the operative marked targets. The Purity Ascendant will cleanse this abomination. Preparations are already underway. In another section of the station, a human technician with unnaturally pale eyes finished placing a small device behind an access panel. As he sealed the panel and walked away, the device's timer silently began its countdown. The first explosion rocked Keldrax's station with devastating precision. Emergency klaxons wailed as the diplomatic reception area plunged into darkness, momentarily illuminated by the red glow of emergency lighting. Screams and clicking vocalizations filled the suddenly chaotic space as humans and Zendari alike sought to understand what was happening. Captain Reyes found herself thrown against a bulkhead, momentarily disoriented by the blast. As her vision cleared, she realized Admiral Krell was beside her, the Zendari's exoskeleton having partially shielded her from flying debris. "We must move," Krell clicked urgently, his translator barely audible above the alarms. "This section is losing atmospheric integrity." No sooner had he spoken than a harsh metallic groan echoed through the chamber. Warning lights flashed along one wall as emergency containment fields sputtered to life, struggling to seal a breach in the station's hull. "Admiral Yamamoto," Reyes called out, scanning the smoke-filled room for the rest of the human delegation. The other humans were separated by the blast, Krell informed her, as were my delegation. The explosion was precisely calculated. Understanding dawned on Reyes. This wasn't an accident. Indeed, Krell's antennae twitched toward a secondary exit. That passage should lead to emergency pressure doors. We can seal this section behind us. Without waiting for further discussion, they moved in silent coordination toward the exit, Reyes supporting a limping Krell whose lower appendage had been damaged in the blast. Years of training guided their actions. Two military commanders from entirely different evolutionary paths, working together through gesture and demonstration where words failed. Meanwhile, across the station, chaos reigned. The explosions had been strategically placed to separate the diplomatic teams while maximizing confusion among the station's diverse occupants. Panicking aliens of dozens of species rushed through corridors, creating perfect cover for the saboteurs. In the station's security center, Lieutenant Commander Chen had been meeting with Sub-Commander Elith to discuss joint protection protocols when the explosions hit. As alarms blared, they exchanged a single look of mutual understanding before turning to the security monitors. The pattern is deliberate, Elith observed, her compound eyes rapidly scanning multiple screens. Primary targets are communication arrays, life support nexus points, and the main computer core. Chen nodded grimly. Classic destabilization tactics. Create maximum confusion. Disable communications, then target critical infrastructure. His fingers flew across the alien interface. Can you access the internal sensor grid? Already attempting to. Elith's appendages worked with remarkable dexterity. Something is interfering with normal protocols. In the station's main computer hub, Technical Officer Sarah Wong from the Pathfinder had survived the initial blast that had killed the Zendari technicians she'd been working with. Blood trickled from a cut above her eye as she frantically worked to restore systems. This code, she muttered to herself, staring at the scrolling symbols on the monitor. It's a hybrid. She recognized elements of Earth programming languages interspersed with what she'd learned of Zendari coding structures. A sophisticated cyber attack designed by someone intimately familiar with both systems. Who could possibly have expertise in both human and Zendari programming? She whispered, even as her fingers raced to counteract the intrusion. The answer came in the form of a shadow falling across her workspace. Wong turned to find herself facing the humanoid figure in maintenance coveralls. The figure looked almost human, but something about the eyes, too large, too fixed, betrayed its nature. You should not be here, the figure said, voice oddly modulated. This area was to be cleared by the explosion. Wong's hand slowly moved toward the toolkit at her belt. Who are you? What have you done to the station? The figure tilted its head at an unnatural angle. I am merely an instrument of necessary purification. Your species and the Zendari must not form alliance. It disrupts the natural order. In the central hub, Chen and Elith had managed to restore partial sensor functionality and were tracking the movements of several suspicious figures through the station. There, Chen pointed to a blinking indicator on the station schematic. Maintenance Shaft 14. Someone's accessing the primary life support controls. Elith consulted a different screen. Security teams are overwhelmed with evacuation procedures. We must investigate ourselves. Minutes later, they converged on the maintenance shaft, Elith's Zendari reflexes allowing her to anticipate the attack from the hidden assailant. The figure moved with unnatural speed, but fell quickly to their combined effort. As Chen secured the unconscious attacker, Elith examined it closely. This is not right, she clicked, mandibles agitated. The external features appear Zendari, but she carefully lifted what appeared to be a section of exoskeleton to reveal synthetic components and human-like skin beneath. What in the name of Earth's oceans is this? Chen breathed. The answer came as they removed more of the disguise, revealing a being that had been surgically and genetically modified to pass as either species as needed, a hybrid creation with features of both human and Zendari anatomy, yet belonging to neither. A small insignia was tattooed on the creature's neck, a stylized star with a line struck through it. Beneath it, words in an ancient Zendari dialect that Elith translated with growing horror. Purity ascended. The stars must remain separate. The operative's eyes suddenly flashed open. Before either could react, it bit down on something hidden in its mouth. You cannot stop the purification, it gasped as foam appeared at its lips. We are everywhere. We are Legion. The Alliance must never. The words ended abruptly as the creature convulsed and fell still, its secrets dying with it. 6 months after the Keldrax's station attack, the newly completed human Zendari embassy station gleamed against the backdrop of Proxima Centauri V. Its architecture embodied the rapidly evolving relationship between the two species. Human-inspired curved passageways seamlessly transitioning into the geometric precision favored by Zendari designers. The central observation dome, a perfect hemisphere of transparent aluminum, offered breathtaking views of the red dwarf star and its orbiting planet. Elena Reyes, now bearing the title of ambassador rather than captain, adjusted the collar of her formal diplomatic uniform as she gazed out at the stars. The past months had transformed her life in ways she could never have anticipated when the Pathfinder first encountered the Zendari border station. Contemplating the void, Ambassador. The familiar clicking cadence of Admiral-turned-Ambassador Krell's voice brought a smile to her face. Contemplating our journey, she replied, turning to face her Zendari counterpart. Krell's exoskeleton now bore intricate markings of diplomatic service alongside his military honors, and a ceremonial human sash crossed his thorax, a gesture of respect that would have been unimaginable half a year earlier. A journey with unexpected companions, Krell observed, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight. The High Council never anticipated humans would become our closest allies after that first misunderstanding. Nothing unites quite like a common enemy, Rise noted. The investigation into Purity Ascendant had revealed a conspiracy spanning multiple star systems. The shadowy organization had operatives embedded throughout human space and the Zendari Confederation, all working toward a singular goal, keeping intelligent species isolated from one another. Their manifesto, recovered from encrypted data cores, spoke of preserving evolutionary purity and preventing the dilution of unique cosmic paths. In the Grand Assembly Hall below, representatives from 23 species had gathered for the historic signing of the Mutual Defense and Cultural Exchange Accords. Many had come out of curiosity, some out of genuine interest in the alliance, and others to assess the potential threat this unexpected partnership might pose to their own interests. Admiral Yamamoto has arrived, Krell noted, his antennae detecting the subtle change in the assembly hall's atmosphere. Rise nodded. Then it's time. They made their way to the hall, where the final preparations for the ceremony were underway. The document at the center of the proceedings began with words that both species had embraced. When the alert sounds that humans and Zendari approach together, let the stars themselves take notice. What had begun as a warning of terror had been transformed into a declaration of unity. After the formal signing, Admiral Yamamoto approached Rise as the gathered dignitaries mingled. The HSS/ZNS Pathfinder I is ready for commissioning, Ambassador. Joint crew, joint command structure, just as you recommended. Rise smiled. And its first mission. Those anomalous signals from beyond the galaxy's edge. The ones that match no known pattern. Yamamoto's expression grew serious. Intelligence suggests Purity Ascendant may have originated from that region. If there's a parent civilization directing these activities, then we need to understand what we're truly facing. Rise finished. Lieutenant Commander Chen, now assigned as Chief Tactical Officer of the Pathfinder I, joined them with Sub-Commander Elith at his side. The human and Zendari officers had developed an uncanny ability to anticipate each other's thoughts during their joint investigation. Final security protocols are in place, Chen reported. The hybrid detection systems are online at all diplomatic facilities across both territories. Elith's mandibles clicked in affirmation. Joint technological development has yielded 57% greater efficiency than either of our previous systems. The adaptability of human design complements the precision of Zendari engineering. As the ceremony concluded, Rise found herself once again at the observation dome, watching as the Pathfinder Aya disengaged from the station, its sleek hull incorporating elements of both human and Zendari design philosophies. The ship's mission represented everything she had fought for: exploration and understanding rather than fear and isolation. Admiral Krell joined her, his exoskeleton reflecting the glow of the departure thrusters. They believe they can keep us separated, these Purity Ascendant zealots. They do not understand the fundamental nature of intelligent life. Which is? Rise asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Adaptation through connection, Krell replied. My scientists now believe it is a universal constant. Intelligence does not evolve to remain isolated, but to form ever more complex networks. Beyond the viewport, the Pathfinder I engaged its hybrid drive system, creating a brilliant flash of light as it departed on humanity's first truly joint mission with another species. Somewhere in the void, Purity Ascendant watched and plotted. Their operatives reported the failure of their initial efforts with cold precision. The human-Zendari alliance had not only survived their attempt to strangle it in its cradle, but had emerged stronger. New protocols would be required, new strategies developed. What they failed to understand, what their doctrine of isolation blinded them to, was that in forcing humanity and the Zendari to face adversity together, they had created precisely the conditions for the two species to discover their complementary strengths. Human adaptability combined with Zendari precision had already yielded technological and cultural advancements neither would have achieved alone. And when the next crisis came, as it inevitably would, the alert would no longer spread fear. Alert! Hostile warship sighted. Humans and Zendari are approaching together.